Chapter 1. The Mysterious Arrival. On a warm sunny day, in the small peaceful town of Dalesville, an event took place that puzzled everyone. It was a day just like any other, with people busy in their everyday lives, when suddenly, a mysterious figure appeared. This figure was not a person, but a dog. A red dog. This was no ordinary dog, however. His fur was the color of a bright autumn leaf, gleaming under the sunshine. His eyes held an intelligent, lively sparkle. The dog was big, and his walk was confident, almost as if he knew where he was going. The townsfolk of Dalesville had never seen such a creature before. As the dog roamed through the streets, people came out of their houses. They watched him, wondering where this unusual animal had come from. The children were especially fascinated by him. They giggled and pointed, hoping he would come closer. The red dog seemed to have no owner. He walked freely, wagging his tail and sniffing the surroundings. His ears perked up at every new sound, and his nose twitched at every new scent. He seemed to be exploring the town, making himself familiar with this new place. But where had he come from? And why was he here in Dalesville? These were the questions that everyone asked each other, but no one knew the answers. In the local cafe, the chatter was all about the red dog. Mrs. Davis, the owner of the cafe, looked out of the window and said, "Such a peculiar dog. I wonder where he's from." The customers nodded, all of them curious about the strange new arrival. At the park, the children tried to call the dog over. They shouted various names, hoping he would respond to one of them. But the red dog just wagged his tail and continued his stroll, seeming to enjoy the attention, but not ready to stop his exploration. By the end of the day, the red dog had become the talk of the town. His arrival was a mystery, his appearance was unusual, and his behavior was fascinating. The townsfolk did not know it yet, but this was just the beginning of a series of events that would make this red dog an unforgettable character in their peaceful little town. So ended the first day of the red dog in Dalesville, a day filled with curiosity, speculation, and the beginning of a unique adventure. The red dog had arrived, and the town would never be the same again. Chapter 2. The Dog of Many Names. In the following days, the red dog became a familiar figure in Dalesville. He was seen everywhere, in the park, on the streets, even at the school. The townsfolk couldn't help but observe his peculiar traits. It wasn't just his unique red fur that set him apart. It was also his behavior, his expressions, and his mannerisms. Soon enough, the people of Dalesville began giving the red dog various nicknames, each inspired by his remarkable features and behaviors. The children at the local school started calling him Sunny, because his red fur shone brightly under the sun, much like the sky on a clear, sunny day. Whenever Sunny trotted into the schoolyard, his fur seemed to glow, spreading warmth and joy among the children. The town's baker, Mr. Thompson, named him Dash. Every morning, Dash would run swiftly, yet gracefully, down the main street towards the bakery. Mr. Thompson would then reward him with a piece of bread, which the dog accepted with a wag of his tail and a contented look in his eyes. Mrs. Davis, the cafe owner, fondly referred to him as Smiley. Smiley, she said, always seemed to have a cheerful, almost smiling expression on his face. His eyes sparkled with joy, and his tail wagged in a rhythm that signaled happiness. Meanwhile, the town's mechanic, Mr. Patterson, nicknamed him Curious, as the red dog often wandered into his garage, sniffing around and tilting his head at the strange machines and tools. His inquisitive eyes were always alert, always trying to understand this new world around him. The elderly Mrs. Tiggins from the end of the lane called him Buddy. Despite her old age and frailty, she loved taking slow, short walks, and Buddy would often accompany her, matching her slow pace with patience and care. He had become a friendly presence, a companion in her otherwise quiet life. And so, the red dog became known by many names. He was Sunny to the children, Dash to the baker, Smiley to the cafe owner, Curious to the mechanic, and Buddy to the old lady. Each name reflected an aspect of his character, making him even more special and loved in the town of Dalesville. Despite the different names, everyone knew whom they were talking about. The Red Dog was unique, and he was their friend. He was a sunny dash of curiosity, a smiling buddy to everyone he met. This newfound bond between the town and the Red Dog was just beginning to form, promising many heartwarming stories in the days to come. Chapter 3. The Bonding Journey. The days passed, and the Red Dog, now known by many names, became a treasured part of Dalesville. Every day was a new adventure for him, and every adventure brought him closer to the townsfolk. One sunny afternoon, Dash, as Mr. Thompson, the baker, liked to call him, was in the bakery. The sweet smell of fresh bread filled the air. Dash sniffed it, wagging his tail. Mr. Thompson chuckled and said, "You like that, don't you, Dash?" Dash gave a happy bark, and Mr. Thompson rewarded him with a small bun. Later that day, Curious, as named by Mr. Patterson, trotted into the mechanic's garage. Mr. Patterson was fixing a car. He looked up and greeted him. "Hello, Curious. Come to learn about cars?" Curious sniffed around, tilting his head at the various tools. Mr. Patterson laughed and patted him on the head. In the evening, Buddy walked slowly beside Mrs. Higgins. She gently touched his soft red fur and said, "You are good company, Buddy. I enjoy our walks together." Buddy looked up at her, his eyes reflecting understanding and affection. The next day, Smiley, as Mrs. Davis called him, wandered into the cafe. She looked at him and asked, "Would you like some water, Smiley?" Smiley wagged his tail, and Mrs. Davis filled a bowl with water for him. He drank it happily while she watched, a smile on her face. Later at the park, the children were playing, and Sonny joined them. They laughed and said, "Catch the ball, Sonny." Sonny ran fast, caught the ball, and brought it back to them. The children clapped and cheered for him. Each day was filled with these interactions. The Red Dog was not just Dash, Smiley, Sonny, Curious, or Buddy. He was a friend to everyone. He listened, he understood, and he responded in his way. His actions spoke louder than words. The way he wagged his tail, the way he barked, the way he looked at them with his expressive eyes. All of this made him a cherished part of their lives. This bonding journey was about more than just the places he visited or the people he met. It was about the friendships he built. It was about understanding and love, about acceptance and companionship. As the days turned into weeks, the Red Dog and the people of Dalesville formed a bond, a connection that was deep and enduring. This was the magic of the Red Dog's journey, a journey that was still unfolding with each passing day. Chapter 4. The Courageous Rescue. One day, something happened that made the Red Dog even more special in the eyes of the people of Dalesville. It was a normal day, just like any other, until suddenly a cry for help echoed through the town. Little Timmy, one of the children who always played with Sonny at the park, had climbed up a tree and was unable to come down. He clung to a branch, his face pale with fear. The townsfolk gathered around the tree, looking up anxiously. Mr. Patterson, the mechanic, tried to climb the tree to rescue Timmy, but he couldn't reach him. Mrs. Davis, the cafe owner, called the fire department, but they said it would take some time for them to arrive. In the midst of all this panic, the Red Dog arrived. He looked up at the tree, then at the people, and seemed to understand the situation. His eyes were fixed on Timmy. He took a few steps back, ran, and jumped against the tree trunk, but he couldn't reach Timmy either. Undeterred, the Red Dog tried again. He ran and jumped, his claws scratching against the bark. He did this several times, getting a little higher each time. The people watched in astonishment as the dog showed a determination and courage they hadn't seen before. Finally, with a great leap, the Red Dog managed to grab the lower branch with his mouth. He swung himself up onto it and then began to climb the tree. It was a sight that the people of Dalesville would remember forever. When the Red Dog reached Timmy, he nudged the scared boy with his nose, as if to reassure him. With one arm, Timmy clung to the branch, and with the other, he held onto the red dog's collar. Slowly and carefully, they made their way down the tree. The moment their feet touched the ground, the townsfolk cheered. They patted the red dog, hugging him and calling him a hero. Even when the fire department arrived, they found the situation already resolved, thanks to the brave red dog. That day, the red dog was not just Sunny, Dash, Smiley, Curious, or Buddy. He was a hero. He was a courageous friend who came to the rescue when help was needed. His brave act proved that he was not just a visitor in their town. He was an important member of their community. And from that day on, the bond between the red dog and the people of Dalesville grew even stronger. Chapter 5. Life in the Town. As the days passed, the red dog settled into the rhythm of Dalesville's daily life. He was not just a fascinating visitor anymore. He was a part of the community, a cherished friend to all. Each day brought new experiences, and yet there was a comforting pattern to it. Every morning, Dash, as Mr. Thompson liked to call him, visits the bakery. He waits patiently at the door as Mr. Thompson bakes fresh bread. The smell fills the air and makes Dash's tail wag in anticipation. Mr. Thompson always gives him a warm bun, which Dash eats with delight. After that, Curious, as named by Mr. Patterson, goes to the garage. He watches as Mr. Patterson fixes cars and machines. Sometimes, he follows Mr. Patterson around, sniffing at the tools and wagging his tail in curiosity. At noon, Smiley, Mrs. Davis's nickname for him, heads to the cafe. He sits outside, watching the people as they come and go. Mrs. Davis brings him a bowl of water and a piece of cake. Smiley enjoys the treat, his tail thumping the ground in joy. In the afternoon, Sunny joins the children at the park. They play catch, and Sunny always fetches the ball, bringing it back to them. The children laugh and cheer, and Sunny barks happily, enjoying the game and the company. Towards the evening, Buddy walks with Mrs. Haydens. They move slowly, enjoying the quiet and peace. Mrs. Haydens talks to Buddy, and he listens, his eyes on her, his tail wagging gently. They share a special bond, one of quiet companionship and mutual respect. This routine, this daily life in the town, is what makes the red dog feel at home. He is a part of Dalesville, and Dalesville is a part of him. He is loved and cared for, and he returns that love and care in his own special way. Through his daily interactions, he brings joy, companionship, and a sense of community to the townsfolk. He teaches them about friendship, bravery, and kindness. And even as he continues his journey in this town, he touches the lives of those around him, creating memories that will last a lifetime. Thus, the daily life of the red dog in Dalesville is not just about routines. It's about building relationships, sharing experiences, and making every day special. It's about living and loving, about being a part of something bigger. And in doing so, the red dog makes Dalesville a better, happier place. Chapter 6. The Love of a Dog. Living in Dalesville, the red dog had formed a bond with its people that was filled with affection and mutual respect. Every interaction, every shared moment, and every gesture of kindness was a testament to this relationship. The red dog's love for the townsfolk, and theirs for him, was a wonderful example of the bond between humans and animals. The children adored Sunny. They looked forward to seeing him at the park every day. His joyful barks, his lively runs, and his playful nature made them feel happy and excited. The sight of his bright red fur and the wagging of his tail were enough to bring a smile to their faces. Mrs. Davis appreciated Smiley's company at her cafe. She enjoyed seeing him sitting outside, watching the world go by. His serene demeanor had a calming effect on her, making her feel peaceful and content. When she looked into his sparkling eyes, she felt a connection, a sense of understanding that words could not express. Mr. Thompson respected Dash for his patience and loyalty. He looked forward to their daily interactions at the bakery, knowing that Dash would be waiting for him every morning. Dash's anticipation for the fresh buns and his grateful acceptance of the treat brought warmth to Mr. Thompson's heart. Mr. Patterson admired Curious for his inquisitiveness and intelligence. He enjoyed watching the dog explore the garage, sniffing around, and showing interest in the tools and machines. Curious's determination to understand his surroundings was a reminder for Mr. Patterson of the joy of learning and discovery. Mrs. Higgins cherished Buddy for his companionship. Despite her age, she enjoyed their quiet walks together. Buddy's patience and understanding made her feel valued and cared for. His steady presence was a comfort to her, a source of joy in her otherwise quiet life. And so, the Red Dog, through his daily interactions with the townsfolk, was spreading love and joy. He was teaching them about loyalty, patience, serenity, curiosity, and companionship. He was showing them that a dog's love is unconditional and pure, a love that asks for nothing in return. As the Red Dog continued his life in Dalesville, he left a lasting impact on its people. His love was a gift to them, a gift that they cherished deeply. And in return, they showered him with love, making him an integral part of their community, their lives, and their hearts. Chapter 7. The Final Adventure. Life in Dalesville went on, and each day was filled with joy and love thanks to the presence of the Red Dog. But as seasons changed, so did the routine of the town and their beloved friend. There was an air of anticipation, a sense of an impending adventure. One sunny morning, Dash appeared at the bakery with an unusual energy. Mr. Thompson noticed this and smiled. "You seem excited, Dash. Do you have a new adventure planned?" Dash wagged his tail and barked, a gleam of excitement in his eyes. Later, as Curious, he visited Mr. Patterson's garage. But today, he was more restless than curious. He kept looking towards the edge of town, as if something awaited him. "You look like you are ready for an adventure, Curious," Mr. Patterson noted, patting his head. In the afternoon, Sonny was at the park with the children, but he didn't seem as playful. He kept gazing into the distance, his ears perked up. "Are you going somewhere, Sonny?" the children asked, puzzled by his behavior. At the cafe, Smiley did not relax and watch the world as he usually did. Instead, he seemed to be watching for something specific. "You're going on an adventure, aren't you, Smiley?" Mrs. Davis asked, observing his restlessness. In the evening, Buddy didn't walk with Mrs. Higgins. He seemed preoccupied, his eyes focused on something unseen. Mrs. Higgins understood. "You will go on a journey soon, won't you, Buddy?" she asked gently. The next morning, the Red Dog was not at the bakery. He was not at the garage, the park, or the cafe. He was not walking with Mrs. Higgins. The townsfolk looked for him and found him standing at the edge of town, gazing out into the open countryside. Understanding dawned upon them. It was time for their friend to continue his journey, to embark on a new adventure. They knew he would go, and they knew he would return. After all, Dalesville was now his home. And so, with bittersweet smiles, they bid him farewell. They knew that in the days to come, they would miss him. They knew they would look forward to his return. But they also knew that this was part of the life of their red friend, a life filled with adventures. His last adventure in Dalesville was not a goodbye. It was a promise of a new story, a new journey. They could already imagine the thrilling tales he would bring back. And as they watched him disappear into the horizon, they knew that the story of the Red Dog was far from over. Chapter 8. Farewell, Red Dog. The day had finally come. The Red Dog stood at the edge of Dalesville, looking back at the town he had come to call home. The townsfolk had gathered to bid him farewell, their faces a mix of smiles and tears. The children were the first to approach him. They'd hugged him tightly, their small arms wrapping around his broad, warm body. "We'll miss you, Sonny," they said, their voices trembling slightly. They promised to keep playing in the park, to keep his spirit alive in their games. Next came Mr. Thompson from the bakery. He patted Dash on his head and presented him with a bag full of warm buns. For the road, Dash, he said, his voice thick with emotion. He promised to keep baking every day, keeping the smell of fresh bread alive in the air of Dalesville. Mr. Patterson from the garage came forward, his rough hands gently scratching behind Curious's ears. He showed him a newly fixed car, its engine purring smoothly. "I'll keep fixing things, Curious," he said with a soft smile. He promised to keep his tools ready, to keep the spirit of curiosity alive in the garage. Mrs. Davis from the cafe approached next. She held out a piece of cake and a bowl of water for Smiley. "Keep smiling, wherever you go," she told him, her voice steady. She promised to keep the cafe open, to keep the sense of tranquility alive on its premises. Lastly, Mrs. Higgins came forward. She held Buddy's face in her hands, her eyes meeting his. She didn't say much. Instead, she gently pressed her forehead against his, a silent promise hanging in the air between them. Finally, it was time. With a wag of his tail and a final bark, the red dog turned and began to walk away. The townsfolk watched as he disappeared into the horizon, his red fur glowing in the setting sun. "Farewell, Red Dog," they whispered. Their hearts were heavy, but they knew this was not a permanent goodbye. Their red friend would return, filled with new stories, new experiences. They would keep his memory alive, keep their promises until they met again. As the sun set on Dalesville, there was a sense of completion, a sense of a chapter closing. The story of the Red Dog was a journey that had taught them about friendship, love, bravery, and loyalty. And though the Red Dog was gone for now, his spirit remained ingrained in the heart of the town and its people. "Farewell, Red Dog," they repeated, their voices echoing into the dusk. "Until we meet again." And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, they knew that the story of the Red Dog was far from over. It was a tale that would continue to unfold, a tale that would forever be a part of Dalesville.